In general, when you have interest rates going up and inflation at high levels, usually this is the kind of things that will push people to spend less. But then I think on the other hand, what we have is the dynamics of going out of COVID and the fact that people have all these missed experiences and things that they want to do.
Welcome to The Ripple Effect, the podcast that takes you on a journey through the minds of Wharton faculty. I'm your host, Dan Loney, and in each episode, we'll be diving deep into the inspiration behind the groundbreaking research that Wharton professors have conducted and exploring how their findings resonate with the world today.
Well, certainly consumers have been spending big over the last 3 years. The financial assistance from the government during the time of COVID, combined with other factors like no student loan payments, have allowed people to buy things, spend money fixing up their home, or take a vacation. But now we have higher inflation for the first time in several decades, and that could lead to a change in spending patterns. So what will this mean for the economy? Itay Goldstein is a professor of finance here at the Wharton School. Itay, great to talk to you again.
Great talking to you.
Thank you. So obviously this has been a unique time over the last 3 years with how people have spent. You were saying to me before we started this that maybe even still today, there's an element of the COVID spending that still is impacting what's going on.
I think so, yes. I think when you go back to think about COVID, it was a period of time where people could not spend. They could not do things that they like to do. They could not take vacations. They could not eat in restaurants. And it's been, a good 2 years or more that people felt constrained on all these things. I think once we passed COVID and people think like they see that they can go out again, they can go back to living their lives, there is a little bit of a change in the psychology of spending. So, one thing to think about is there are all these missed experiences. So for a while you didn't go on vacation, and then you go back and you check, and there are all these places you wanted to see, you haven't had a chance to do it yet, and now you feel like this is the time to do it. But I think even beyond that, something has changed because people realized, I should probably spend and consume and have a good time today because who knows what's going to happen down the road. And I think those two things have changed during COVID and the aftermath of COVID and led people to think a little differently when they decide how much they want to spend. I would add to this maybe a little speculatively something else that is happening now big time, and this is climate change. And, there is climate change itself, but there is also the awareness of it. And if you go back to think about all the news we saw over the summer about unprecedented weather and things are changing quickly and more quickly than we thought and all this. And I think people start having this in mind, who knows what's going to happen? Let's just do it as quickly as we can because things around us are changing, and maybe things that we are doing today we will not be able to do a couple of years from now, or maybe things will change and we will just not have the same opportunities.
Obviously, we've seen a run of inflation, unprecedented, that we haven't seen in such a long period of time. So then I guess with all of that money kind of awash in people's pockets, it's probably not a surprise to see them even spending when you've got that level of inflation in the economy, because as you said, we were blocked out of a lot of this for such a period of time.
Yes, I will say this is true. I mean, as you point out, in general, when you have interest rates going up and inflation at high levels, usually this is the kind of things that will push people to spend less. But then I think on the other hand, what we have is the dynamics of going out of COVID and the fact that people have all these missed experiences and things that they want to do. And this was certainly very strong in the first year after COVID, but I think it still has an effect. And then the psychology that has changed, the fact that people now say, who knows when I will be able to do it again, so I should probably just do it now. So I think this is kind of a counter effect to the inflation and the interest rate and pushing people to spend more despite of these traditional economic forces.
How much of it is potentially kind of a tale of two stories here with the people that have and the people that have not, and how each grouping of people are reacting to the higher interest rates in where they can spend, what they can spend on, and kind of the reassessment of the idea of a budget. And, maybe that idea of a budget had gone away for a while as well.
Yeah, I think this is definitely true. I mean, we always have a story of inequality. And some people have money to spend and they're spending more. Other people don't have and they're spending less. And in some sense, over time, we do unfortunately see these gaps growing. So I do think we see some of it now. I mean, certainly the fact that interest rates are high is affecting some people much more adversely than others. And I expect that we are going to continue seeing that going forward. And it is important to note, I mean, we are sitting here and talking about the fact that people are generally spending a lot. I don't think this is unbounded. I do think there is some boundary to it. And at some point, we will see that it is starting to reverse. And in fact, it is important to note that we already see some of the signs of reversal or slowing down showing up in recent data. It's not that when you look at the data, this is unambiguously strong and going in just one direction. So it is a bit of a mix. I would say in general, what you see is a level of spending that is above experts' expectations given the economic conditions. But as you point out, there are some people who spend more, some people who don't. And I also think that when you look at the aggregate, it's a bit of a mix. It's not like it is unambiguous increase.
If there is a slowing of the economy, and there are suggestions that we're seeing that a little bit right now, how much do we potentially slow down? How much impact is there potentially? Or is that still kind of a wait and see?
I think this is still a wait and see. I mean, this is in some sense really the big question that is on everyone's mind. If you think a little bit about the economic developments of recent years, we've seen a period of high inflation. Then the Fed is coming in and starting to increase rates really fast and really substantially, much more, I think, than was originally planned. And the expectation was that this is going to slow down the economy, potentially bring a recession, but at least it will help us fight inflation. We haven't seen the recession coming in yet, so that's the good news. But the bad news in that is that we also did not see inflation fully under control. I mean, it is true that inflation did not continue to go up. If you're thinking about the rate of increase in prices, it has slowed down. So from a rate of 9% or so, we are now down to 4%. So this is okay, but 4 is still pretty high and higher than policymakers are comfortable with. So we are still not out of the woods. So they are still, continuing to try to slow down inflation and bring it back towards the 2. And as long as they are continuing to do that, there is still the chance that there will be a significant slowdown in the economy, and we might even see a recession.
So there's the consumer side of this, but there's also the business side of this and companies that are dealing with this and trying to, especially at this time of the year, make kind of an idea and a path as to what they should expect from consumers right now. How much of a challenge is it for companies, do you think, at this time of the year, especially retailers, who really in years past, the story has been you make your money, you make your hay at the end of the year, to adjust to this dynamic when they assume that interest rates are going to stay higher for longer, and that's going to present a variety of other challenges for them?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, all firms are now thinking about these different scenarios, what this is going to imply to their revenues and ultimately to the bottom line. I will say overall, it's ambiguous. Some will be more optimistic, some are less optimistic, and it's very hard to tell where it's going to go. I mean, overall, when I look at what happened in the last few months, I think the signs are overall fairly encouraging. And, we do see, as we discussed, spending still fairly strong. And I think there is a good case to believe that it's going to continue being strong going into the holidays. So the end of the year is going to be good for many firms in that respect. But there are so many forces going on, and the fact that interest rates are still high, and the fact that also the reserves that allowed people to spend more are dwindling to some extent. At some point, there will be some inflection point, and we might see it starting to go the other way.
Is there an element of that spend then that you think is still actually out there in people's pockets at this point?
I think so, yes. I mean, you mentioned it's those who have and those who have not, and clearly that's true, that's there. So certainly from the point of view of many households, they don't have the money to spend, or whatever they had, whatever they accumulated during COVID is gone. But we still have a significant portion of the population that has those significant reserves and can spend. And I think, as I mentioned in the beginning, I still think the psychology of COVID and the fact that they have a deficit of spending in their mind, they wanted to do all these things and they didn't do them, combined with the fact that they still have money to do it, still pushes them to spend. And I think this is what we see in the data.
What do you think's been the impact on the mindset of the Federal Reserve and the leaders in terms of making these rate increases that obviously they've made over the last year and a half, but also the path to go forward? I mean, the question now is whether or not is there another rate increase that's needed, or is it something that we're off the books, we can let it sit for a while and see how the economy reacts to it?
So when you listen to the leaders of the Fed, the people at the board, the presidents of the regional Fed, they are basically watching it as we go and continuing to update almost on a daily basis, I would say. I think whenever I listen to them and talk to people who work there, there is a sense that what we are seeing is not exactly what we expected and doesn't really go by the book according to recent experiences. So it's a bit of a novel dynamics that we see here. But, life continues to have novel elements, right? You never see exactly what you've seen before. And I think this is what we see here. So they are just watching the data continuously and trying to decide what to do. As you know, there was a period of time where they paused the rate increase because they thought that they've done enough of it, and now they want to see how it affects the economy, and they don't want to overshoot, because the risk of overshooting is that you're going to push the economy into a severe recession. So that has been the mindset recently, but there's certainly some other voices, and I think it really depends on how the data evolves.
How then should companies be thinking about their quarterly expectations with all of these dynamics at play? I mean, they still obviously are looking for the best profitability that they can find, but if we do see a relatively noticeable slowdown in what consumers think, then they have to reassess what their numbers are going to be over the next couple of quarters, don't they?
Yes, absolutely. So, the CFOs of the companies, I think all companies are exactly the same position. They are updating as we speak, and they are continuously watching the data and deciding what to do. I mean, in some sense, this is not unusual, because this is what they always do. I mean, it's not like you can think about a period of time where there is no uncertainty and we know exactly where we are going. There are always different factors pushing in different directions, and you always need to update. But I think it will be fair to say that this is a period with increased uncertainty because of all these things that we discussed. So, they have to continuously watch what the Fed is doing, what spending is. And when you're thinking about spending, it's at the macro level, but also at the industry level and the level of their own firm. And they're making predictions based on that.
What do you think then is the message to the public about what we're seeing play out right now and obviously what we've seen with the Federal Reserve and how companies are reacting to all of this as we head towards the end of the year and we think about 2024, which I think a lot of people hope is going to be a better year than we've seen this year.
Yes. A lot of people hope it's going to be a better year. I think that's a fair statement. But we don't really know. I think, as we discussed, there are still those headwinds coming our way. Basically, the fact that interest rates are still high, inflation is still not completely under control. People hope that there is a soft landing, but we haven't seen it yet, and we might fall into alternative scenarios. One scenario is the scenario of no lending at all, where inflation is still up there and is not fully under control. Another scenario is a scenario of lending, but is not so soft, so we are going into a recession. So those are still out there as possibilities. Going into 2024, I think there are reasons to be optimistic and hope for a soft landing, but it's certainly not guaranteed.
Itay, great to talk to you again. Thank you very much.
Very good talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Itay Goldstein, Professor of Finance here at the Wharton School.
Thank you for listening to The Ripple Effect. We hope you found this episode informative and engaging. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review so that we can continue to bring you the best insight from the Wharton School.